Off the camera, guys.
Big face here. Carmen. Yeah.
Did he show?
Back to you.
My name is Michael Rousey, and I'm doing an informative speech. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming today. Today I would like to speak about a topic that most of us have heard about, most of us have talked about. However, there may be some information today that I share that you've never known about. And today, this modern tool of technology I'm going to speak about is the Internet. In this speech, we're going to discover that the Internet has had its beginnings with military and educational networks, and find out what important modern technology has come about because of the innovations of the military and the educational backgrounds of our country. And in the third point, we're going to talk about the future of the Internet. You know, where do we see it going? So let's discover a few interesting points about the Internet. The Internet itself has really not been known as the Internet as we know it today. It actually started with something called the ARPANET. It was an educational and military network that was founded in the late 60s, early 70s, that the military used, obviously, to communicate with the Pentagon and other places in the world. And then educational folks were added on later. You know, with I don't know if Indiana was part of that, but you know, Harvard was a part of it, MIT, some of the greater, bigger places in the 60s and 70s, UCLA also. And based on an information from the Internet article all about the Internet, history of the Internet, UCLA and the networking group NWG had the main portion of development of the ARPANET. A gentleman by the name of Robert Kahn developed the ARPANET using network topology and architectural design. And just to give you an idea of the design of the ARPANET, it looks kind of strange, but all these little boxes here just represent different servers that were on the network. And as you can see, even in the 60s and 70s, there were several. Some of them you may not be able to see, but if you can, several of them that you might recognize would be, here's MIT, and you've got UCLA right here. This one was actually the first one that was introduced to the ARPANET, so everything kind of spread out from there. Got Hawaii over here by satellite, so in the 60s and 70s they still use satellites. Even now today they still use them. But many of these boxes represent, again, many of the servers that, you know, that today even exist on the intranet. In 1961, another gentleman by the name of Leonard Kinrock presented a terminology called packet switching, which today is the backbone of modern computers, networks. In our office here, we have a switch which, you know, through that switch, different packets from different computers do go through, and that's how that the Internet works, and even how our local network works here. In the development of the ARPANET, again, there was several different things that came about from the development of the ARPANET. One of them was the TCP/IP protocol, which means the Transmission Control Protocol. It's basically a language that the computers use to communicate with each other, particularly over the Internet now. That's all we're using. It was actually originally called TCP, just for Transmission Control Protocol, but they actually put IP at the end because it was adopted in 1983 as part of the Internet, and that's what everything uses now, for the most part. In an IP address, I'm sure most of you have seen an IP address if you use computers now, that TCP/IP protocol allowed for IP addressing, which today most computer networks have a 4-section Internet address, which is representation of actually a hexadecimal number. It's a good thing you don't have to remember that, you just have to remember the 4 digits there. But it's a 32-bit address, which again, it's basically a 32-digit binary number. But thankfully, you know, on the Internet, all these computers, they have this number, because if they didn't, we wouldn't have an Internet. One other thing that came about was the Domain Name Service, or DNS. After a while, there were several computers here, but today there's millions of computers on the Internet. There's no way that these computers, you know, they would know who they are. So in 1984, you know, the domain name service was introduced, and that basically allowed for the internet to be able to take an IP address and a name and put them together. For example, if you go to google.com today, google.com is not just google.com, it's also an IP address. So there are servers out on the internet now that take care of that for us. According to the Microsoft Encyclopedia of Networking, second edition, something else came about. A gentleman at a physics research center in Geneva, Switzerland, a researcher by the name of Tim Berners-Lee, developed what we now know as the HTTP, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. I found it interesting that the book said he kind of accidentally did it because he was working on other projects, and he just accidentally just came up with HTTP. If you know much about web pages, you know that every address, especially in your browser, if you look at it, starts with HTTP. If it wasn't for HTTP, there would not be an internet. So far, we've taken a look at the history of the internet, we've taken a look at some of the modern technologies, but finally, let's look at some of the future aspects of the internet. Right now, the IP address system that's undergoing some kinds, there are some constraints. There are IP addresses available, but probably some people estimate within a couple of years there will be no more IP addresses available as far as a public internet. It's definitely a problem and a challenge. However, there is other protocols available. Right now, they use a version called IP4, which is that four-digit binary number. But in the future, they have something called an IP6 address, which actually expands that 32-bit number to like 128 bits. So it's a great increase on the number, so we should have no problems. And the unfortunate thing is it's really slow to the marketplace. So we hope in the next several years that is going to come to the internet to keep it going. Also, viruses, Trojans, spyware, who hasn't had that before? We're going to have to continue to work on that in the years to come. There's been proactive things, there's been reactive things we've done. For example, servers will use intrusion detection systems, and retroactive things such as antivirus software, spyware software, and those kinds of things do help prevent spyware, but we are going to have to deal with that in the future. And one final thing is, the regulation of the internet. Obviously, over the years, the internet has grown extremely large, and obviously everything within every country is not regulated the same way. So if you go to a third world nation, for example, there may be some things that are different. Maybe some things you do in this country is not going to be legal in this country. So there's a lot of things. A lot of different countries have come out. China, for one. Iran, I think today even talked about, they're blocking certain websites from their countries. So there's a lot of things that are going to have ramifications in the future regarding regulation. And today, as we said, today we've discovered the internet, we've discovered some modern technologies, we've looked into the future. As we moved into the 21st century, it's apparent by our society that the internet will forever take a place in modern life. Just 20 years ago, guys, these guys that did the internet, the ARPANET, they envisioned a day where we would take things like this phone here, and we would be able to compute on our desks. And today, 20 years later, we do have that capability. We can access the internet almost anywhere now, thanks to modern technology. So today I hope you've learned something, and have a great day.